It's late summer in Bellingham, and I am fortunate to be able to ride the new Trek Slash. This is the 9.9 X01 model. Got carbon everywhere, carbon wheels, carbon cranks. It's nice and light for having a little bit more travel than in the past. This new model's got 170 up front, 160 in the rear. New bike certainly feels really good just sitting on this thing. It's got like a 486 millimeter reach, and with the new 75.5 degree seat angle in the low setting that I'm using, just like a perfect feeling cockpit. I feel a little stretched out and just feels really stable. There are certainly steeper seat tube angles out there, but with a 437 millimeter chainstay, this bike feels really good. Definitely feel, not completely centered between the wheels, but feel like I'm just in a great forward position. I do have the seat all the way forward on the rails for this bike. This helps out in Bellingham, where you can never seem to get away from the 12+% grade climbs. This bike feels really solid climbing in the saddle. That rear shock is pretty free to do its business, to soak up the bumps. Feels pretty large and in charge, kind of like the Trek Fuel EX that I reviewed the other day. It's got a very distinct kind of Trek feel. Super lightweight, nice low rolling resistance on that back Bontrager SE4 tire. One of the surprising things to me, honestly, is like I've been on some bikes with a 170 fork that kind of make the bars feel high. Feels like, that 170 fork is just a lot to manage. And this bike doesn't feel like that at all. It's pretty strange. And honestly, feels kind of maneuverable like a 160 bike might feel like. Got that nice SRAM X01 kit everywhere. Super crisp shifts, just super snappy. Got the Code RSC brakes with the reach adjust. Definitely the standout features of this big old bike is how lightweight it feels. Just pulling it up, just to kind of like bunny hop, even when you're on a climb, just kind of preloading the bike over little obstacles. It's like, wow, it does feel way too light for a 170 forked bike. All right, time to point this big rig downhill and see what it feels like on some kind of flat jank routes. Oh man, yeah, it's definitely feeling ultra active. The old through shaft, definitely moving rapidly over these little finger roots. Got some pretty good dirt conditions, as it just rained yesterday. Looks like the ground just soaked it right up. Yeah, feeling maneuverable despite the pretty long reach too. But between those fat tires and the rear shock damping, this thing is pretty soft. This trail's a little bit flatter, but I'm not afraid to ride it on the Slash. It's a pretty light bike, just a really soft experience. It's pretty crazy actually in the rear end. Woo! Feels like it can kind of be deep in the travel and still just change directions on a dime. That rear shock, that's a good little gap. And with the light weight of this bike, it is still super easy to pop over stuff. Big roots, big roots. Woo, buddy. Some pretty wacky lines through there, but I'd say that was a success. You don't really need to pick your lines too carefully for this bike. Oh, this is a really good time on this bike. The soak factor is pretty ridiculous. And I don't know, it feels like it's just really easy to command around. It's not a big bike that is making me afraid to ride flat, pumpy terrain. I think that has to do with the weight of this bike, but I don't know. Woo, 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 woo. Love that line. It maintains a ton of speed through the bumpy routes. Oh my gosh. Whoa. Yeah, that shock. That shock is keeping up with every single one of those routes. Holy, that's pretty gnarly. Doesn't feel like too long of a bike to lean over either. It's got a really good balance of like front to rear stability, but doesn't feel like too much bike to turn at all. I think they nailed the geometry as far as the reach and the chainstay are concerned. If you haven't tried one of these ZEBs yet, they are a really nicely tracking fork as well. Really kind of complements that rear shock, which is pretty crazy, as this bike can definitely track over the routes. And I like it because it can run the rebound speeds quite fast. No matter how deep that shock seems to be in, it just keeps tracking the ground. Ew. Yeah, man, I like these this SE5 tire up front too. Definitely getting a little crazy with that on the dust today. And it's got a really predictable kind of breaking point of traction. Appreciate that. Keeping me upright. Such a soft bike on your wrists. It does have a lot of travel, I guess. It's quite a easy bike to throw around for having so much travel. I've been kind of in a small bike mood lately, and this big bike is actually feeling quite nimble. Woo-hoo! This is a good tracking section. I'm sure this bike will just eat it up. Phew! Yep, definitely dusty today, but feeling good. Yeah, definitely some points given to the SE5 tire. I think it's doing good in the dust. And the front to back suspension feels super well balanced with the Trek tuning that was done. It's nice to have a bike that you can just lean back and let it take all the hits for you. You don't need to be super careful about line choice. Ooh, yeah, so dusty. Woo-hoo-hoo. This bike's great to lean over. Just feels kind of really predictable and plastered to the ground when you're deep in a corner. It's a bike where you could do pretty long, heinous descents and not get all pumped out. And this is 30% sag. Got it set up just a hair over 30. And it just feels so smooth still. And with that 64 head angle, I think that's been doing me some favors today on the dry, dusty dirt. When the bike just starts to wash out, it just kind of tones down the steering, makes it a little bit easier for you to, you know, make minor adjustments instead of just sawing at the handlebars. So who is this bike for? This bike is definitely for the enduro racing junkie. Quite a lightweight bike, easy to get up the hill, and then once you're at the top, you just have all this power at your control, ultimate stability, and still they made it so light that it manages to be quite light and maneuverable as well. But they nailed the geometry spot on as far as I'm concerned. In a bike this size, the mixture of stability to agility just really matches like big bike territory that this bike sits in. Woo! So if you like this review, consider subscribing to the YouTube channel. And for the full write-up, head on over to freehubmag.com.